Well, are you saying to me you wouldn't go back into a legacy news organisation?
I could do 60 Minutes in my spare time. But I would want to have it as a contractual thing that I could personally fire Anderson Cooper.
Why is that?
He's just a total knob.
G'day, I'm Lachlan Cartwright. Welcome back to the Breaker Pod, coming to you this week from the Upper East Side. And my guest today needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one regardless. Piers Morgan has survived nearly every media extension event. Tabloids, talk shows, Twitter rants, even breakfast TV. He sparred with presidents, stormed off sets, and built a media empire that has seen his loud, personal, and sometimes polarizing brand go global with 4.2 million subscribers on YouTube. Now he has a new book out, Woke is Dead, How Common Sense Triumphed in an Age of Total Madness. Piers Morgan, welcome to the Breaker Pod. Thanks for coming on.
You are very fortunate to be sitting opposite me because, as you know, and this might be slightly bemusing to our American viewers, but I have a golden rule that in Ashes Month, in other words,
Ashes Month,
when we're about to start the old enemy clash of England against Australia at cricket, I have a cardinal rule of speaking to no Australians.
Well, I feel very lucky then, Piers.
Never fraternising with the enemy. You are the one exception.
I feel very, very lucky. Thank you for coming on. One of the chapters in this book is called Go Woke and Go Broke. Do you think media companies made hiring decisions in the moment and they've ended up with subpar newsroom leaders?
Probably in some cases. I think it was endemic across all industries. There was this frenzied move to do what they call DEI, but which I think ended up placing a premium on mediocrity over meritocracy. And I just never believe in that. I just think you should always just appoint the best people for the best job, regardless of skin colour or any other considerations. So I think that's inevitable. I think common sense has begun to prevail again. You're seeing screeching U-turns on DEI really through most companies for the right reasons.
CBS News just laid off their whole DEI diversity team.
I just think they were putting way too much energy into something which wasn't functioning the way they probably originally intended it with the best intentions. I think it was Steven Pinker I saw this week talking about the DEI was a bit like the Holy Roman Empire. It was neither Holy Roman or an empire by the end. And I think that was the problem with DEI, was it wasn't very diverse, it wasn't very equal, and it wasn't very inclusive. So thank you and good night.
You grew up in a country pub in East Sussex. Do you think that's what's helped you call out the bullshit like cancel culture?
Well, yes, but also...
Did you see through it all?
Well, first of all, pubs are very egalitarian places. Right. You go and, my parents ran a country pub.
Do some of my best work in them. So.
Right, yeah. You're a famous aficionado of pubs, as am I. But the point about them is you get the lord of the manor in one corner, chatting to the local carpenter, the bricklayer, whatever. They're very egalitarian. There was no real class structure in a pub. The only criteria, do you buy a round of drinks and are you fun to have a laugh with? But I also learnt the power of debating. Most people in pubs at some stage have an argument about whatever's in the news. What is different today, and which I really tackle in the book, is in those days the idea that you'd have an argument with somebody and then you'd want to hate them, vilify them, destroy them, cancel them was just total anathema. Why would you do that? You just buy them another drink and say, we'll have another go tomorrow. Yeah. We just tolerated each other's opinions because why wouldn't you? I thought Jon Stewart had this right about how on Thanksgiving he's got uncles who are to right of Attila the Hun or whatever, and he said the idea that they don't have other qualities which he really loves, and they should only be judged on a political view, for example, is sort of perverse and ridiculous, and yet that's where we found ourselves.
You've feuded with everyone from Meghan Markle to the Beeb, to the BBC. Do you see those clashes as media theatre or more moral fights?
It can be both. I mean, it can be for fun, for sport. I had a massive run-in with vegans about vegan sausage rolls, which, did I...
You had a vegan sausage roll?
I have. Do you know what? They have more salt in them than McDonald's cheeseburgers. They are the biggest fraud in world gastronomy.
I've never tasted one, but they just, on just the face of it,
it was Greg's vegan sausage rolls, and they suddenly became hugely popular. The CEO of Greg's actually got up and thanked me personally a year later, because I think I put $1 billion on their bottom line. But no, look, things like that are they're kind of theatrical, but there's always a point to it. I genuinely felt the whole vegan craze, one of the things I talk about in the book, was one of these sort of virtue signalling things that everybody suddenly got really into. But look at the sales of vegan products now. They've absolutely
collapsed,
tanked, right? Because people have kind of moved on. Look at the number of people identifying as gender fluid and all that bullshit. That's collapsed. A lot of the things, the DEI has collapsed. A lot of the things which were the pinnacle, sort of pillars, if you like, of wokeism have all collapsed. Hence the title Woke is Dead. It doesn't mean it's all gone completely. You see outbreaks, I call it whack-a-mole, where people rear their ugly woke heads and try and implement their wokest ideology on people. What's changed is people's acceptance of it and tolerance of it. Immediately, they're getting whacked back in their box, and that is a good thing.
A couple that's considered pretty woke are Meghan and Harry, who you've had your very rich history with, Piers. Would you ever consider making up with them and sort of having them back on the show?
Sure, if they want to come on uncensored and have a live, uncensored interview in which they get properly challenged about their views rather than just spewing them into the ether. My whole issue with them was twofold. One, they went on Oprah Winfrey and in a rather unchallenged way made a series of incendiary allegations against the royal family and the monarchy, called them a bunch of callous racists, caused enormous damage, and never produced any evidence for any of this. And in fact, all they've done recently is try and rein back on it and say, we didn't mean to say they were racist. Oh, bullshit, you did. And the other thing is they became the kind of high priest and priestess of wokeism. And
I like that title for them, the high priest and priestess.
The high priest and priestess of wokeism. And the problem is that, like so many who lead this woke ideology, they never practice what they preached. So they would, for example, on the very day that Meghan threw a $500,000 baby shower here in New York, they actually posted on their Twitter feed, as it was then, an appeal about poverty in London. I was like, really? And then they preached to us about the importance of watching your carbon footprint, while simultaneously using Elton John and George Clooney's
to fly around the
private
world.
jets as a cab firm, and so on and so on and so on. So there's a real hypocrisy underpinning their virtue signalling, classic wokeism issues. And now they're kind of getting more and more irrelevant, more and more desperate, really, I guess, for cash. The only thing that really has made them money is trashing their family. They don't get much access to the family now, for good reason. The family don't trust them. And they're reducing, what's she selling now? Like home cooking, not even from her home. I mean, it's all a bit embarrassing.
She should maybe get on those vegan sausage rolls. Piers, you've worked inside the Murdoch machine for decades. I think you were the youngest editor of a Fleet Street title, News of the World, at 28. When Rupert does go to the big newsroom in the sky and he does tell people he's going to live forever, what will his legacy be, do you think?
He probably will live forever.
94, and he's still knocking around.
Well, whenever I've seen or talked to Rupert in the last few years, he's been absolutely the same Rupert I've known for 30-odd years.
And what is that Rupert? How do you describe that Rupert?
Do you know what? He has an almost childlike curiosity about life, which I find incredibly infectious.
Yeah.
He's also one of the most misunderstood people I know. Rupert, yes, he's tough. Yes, he's an extraordinary business brain. Yes, he has remarkable vision, and he has the guts to back himself to deliver on that thing. That's all true. But people miss out on him. He really does have this insatiable curiosity. I had dinner with him in LA about a year ago, and he'd just come back from seeing Elon Musk's Starlink in LA, the big setup there. And he was just completely enthralled by everything he'd seen. And him telling the story just made me realize there's a guy in his 90s just hungry for information, for new information. I had a long chat with him about my YouTube channel when we went our separate ways about a year ago, and he was so fascinated by the whole concept and what I was doing and why I thought it would work and everything. And I love that side of Rupert. He's just an incredible enthusiast for the future. He never really looks back very much. It's always about what's next. He doesn't really wallow in stuff. And I think that's a sign of a good leader. He just wants to know what's next.
What do you think happens next to his media empire when he does go to that big newsroom in the sky?
Well, I think Lachlan is, running the show now with Rupert at his side. I think they're doing a great job. Fox is smashing all records for ad revenues and ratings and so on. To be very happy about that. Other parts of the company doing great as well. I think, look, it's an amazing behemoth company. Always has been. Multi-layered, multifaceted. I had a great time at News back in the 90s. I had a great time when I went back and worked for them for 3 years recently. I'm still very friendly with them. Yesterday I spent most of the day on Fox shows, and I get on really well with all of them. And it's interesting to watch. You've watched the fortunes of Donald Trump, really, and you can see, I think, that the antipathy towards Fox in particular is far less now than it used to be. Same as Trump. Trump is just people have factored in what he is and what he's like. And of course, he got more people voting for him than the other side did at the election, after people had 4 years to think about the first term. So I think that, I look at Fox and Trump, and you see that they've become, in a way, the new mainstream of politics and media, which would have been, to the people on the left, unthinkable a few years ago. But the left have gone so bonkers, as I point out in the book. And I'm a kind of pissed off liberal. I'm Bill Maher, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, RFK. I'm one of those guys. I would have identified quite happily as liberal if the liberal agenda hadn't been hijacked by these woke fascists. That's what they are. And they became the very thing they profess to hate most. They just became fascists, where they wanted to scold and vilify and shame and destroy and cancel anyone that deviated from their often ludicrous worldview. You don't think biological men should be wrecking women's sport? You're a fascist. It's preposterous.
Fleet Street is such a legendary place. You edited the News of the World, you edited the Mirror. I kind of grew up at the Sun in London. I kind of got the remnants of it at Wapping 2005, 2009. Do you miss that fun and chaos of Fleet Street? And do you think that's just moved online now?
Yeah, I think it's moved online.
Yeah.
I miss the fact. I actually only ever did 2 days work in Fleet Street,
right?
Because of course the Sun had moved out of Fleet Street, famously in the big battle with the unions. So I only had 2 days there, and it looked great fun. It all used to basically be side by side.
There was a boozer on every side of every
pubs everywhere.
Every paper.
They'd all spend all day, trying to beat each other on stories, and then at night drinking with each other and doing lots of other things together. And it sounded great fun. But I think I actually had the last great decade of print newspapers, and I use that word advisedly. The digital side of newspapers will be very strong and will be the future, but print newspapers are basically on a ticking clock now to oblivion. And the reason of that is it's purely generational. My kids are from 32 down to 13. None of them read print newspapers. They don't watch television. They watch YouTube. Which hence my move into YouTube. They don't listen to vinyl records. Listen to digital. They're a fully digitalized generation. So it's sad for me. I still get 5 print newspapers when I'm in the UK. I get 2 when I'm here. Maybe 3 sometimes. I love the feel and the smell and the crackle of newsprint opening up.
Do I.
But my kids just find this totally baffling. All right, dinosaur, whatever. So you either move with the times and you evolve and you change, or you wither and die.
You've always defended tabloid journalism. Do you think it's still relevant and important in 2025?
Oh yeah, look, a big tabloid scoop will still cause huge global waves.
Right.
You see it, all the time. So they're certainly not irrelevant. They can be very powerful tools in the media wheel, no question about that. It's just the way they do it. A lot of newspapers now will break their scoops online and then put them in the print version.
Right.
But that would have been totally unthinkable when I was, the internet had just come along in the early 2000s. I was still doing newspapers till 2004 as an editor. The idea you'd break something
Give
online.
it away, right.
Yeah, why would you do that?
Yeah.
But now, of course, what you're really doing, you're owning it rather than waiting for the print version to drop and letting other people immediately take it and own it for you. So there's a new strategy to how you do things like scoops. It's all about making sure you own it. As we speak, I've just dropped on my channel an exclusive interview with Cristiano Ronaldo. We spent 3-4 days building up the hype around that, branding into all the clips his YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. It's a genuine collaboration between him, who's got 76 million subscribers. I've got 4.2 million. And between us, we've created a lot of buzz. Even the announcement that I'd interviewed Ronaldo with a picture of the two of us got something like 70 million views.
Wow.
These are the kind of numbers that are just unthinkable in conventional mainstream media. That's why I find it so exciting.
You have grown closer to Donald Trump over the years. You speak to him regularly. There was some stats out yesterday. I think his approval rating has dropped down to 37% of Americans saying he's, that's how sort of happy or satisfied they are. What kind of a job do you think he's doing?
It's interesting. There was a poll in England that said that the majority of Brits don't really like Donald Trump personally, but they do at the same time like Trumpism. And I do wonder if you actually asked Americans, not do you like Donald Trump? Because he can be very inflammatory. He can piss people off. He does it deliberately half the time. I find him very entertaining in that regard, but other people get very oversensitive about Trump. I think that if you look at Trumpism, though, what does he stand for? fewer wars, stronger southern border, stronger penalties for serious criminals. He wants an end to the woke ideology. He wants to ban transgender athletes from women's sport and so on. You start ticking off and you start thinking, actually, I agree with a lot of this. He wants people to pay less tax. Okay, I'm in for that. There's a lot of things that the tariff war, I kind of get the bigger picture. He's always believed, I've interviewed him for 20 years, he's always believed that China, for example, has ripped off the United States in terms of trade. He wants to rebalance that. He wants to rebalance trade relations with other countries. I think he's finding his feet with this strategy. He's getting some wins. He's getting some that are holding out. I suspect when we look back in a year's time, it will all have calmed down. And like I said to people from when he got re-elected, I think two things will happen. He'll get the American economy purring and he'll win the Nobel Peace Prize. People may not like it, but I think he will do enough certainly to justify the second, and I do think the first will happen. But it might be a bit of a bumpy ride, as all things are with Trump. So you don't have to like him to actually concede that on a lot of things he might be right.
Did he ask you for advice? What are those conversations like where you guys are texting or talking, or do you give him advice unsolicited? Like, do you say, sometimes. You could have played this better, mate. You could have,
Sometimes. I mean, I remember he asked me when he rang me the day after eating Keir Starmer at the White House. And Keir had jumped in with the king whilst we were for a second state visit. And he was very touched because he's big monarchist, Trump. And he just said to me, what do you think, Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle? And that's got to be the castle, Mr. President. He said, why the castle? I said, just the optics are so much better. You get the carriages through the grounds. It's fantastic. And he went to the castle. So.
You're one of the few media personalities who've really made yourself the product. And we're now seeing this sort of boom time in independent journalism with Substack, YouTube, Beehive. You saw that coming before anyone else. Was that because, as you mentioned, your sons, aren't looking at things? Like, what was the moment you were like, fuck it, I'm going to go off in this direction?
Well, we were doing linear television on a new venture called Talk TV in the UK. And it was well-intentioned, but I think poorly executed, and we all agreed that it had been poorly executed. But at the same time we were doing the linear version, we were doing our YouTube channel. And I interviewed a guy called Bassem Youssef, who's like the Egyptian Jon Stewart. And 23 million people watched it on the YouTube channel. It was insane numbers. Then I interviewed Kanye West, and I interviewed a lot of people. Cristiano Ronaldo the first time, 22 million watched that. And I realised that we were getting stratospheric numbers on digital, which can be produced a lot more efficiently than linear television anyway. And we were getting, for example, with Ronaldo, the first interview, 600,000 watched it on Talk TV, but 22 million watched all the content on our YouTube channel. Why would you continue to bang the linear television drum at vast expense when you can do a much more streamlined, efficient version, which is going to be watched by a gazillion more people? So to me, it was a fairly logical thing. Plus, I just watch people's viewing habits. My kids, they just don't watch television. They watch YouTube, everything through YouTube. 13% now of Americans watch television through the YouTube app on their smart TV. With cable news, I still love. I'm addicted to cable news, but the average age of cable news watchers in America is 70.
It's growing. Yeah.
It's 70. So there's a reality check here for legacy media, if you like, and the reality is young people like YouTube and they like social media. You got to go where the action is.
So Barry Weiss just recently took over CBS News. She's looking for personalities. She's looking for new voices. She apparently was shopping around people around at Fox and Brett Barr and people under contract. Piers, if she came to you tomorrow and said, I need Piers Morgan to front 60 Minutes, you'll also host the evening news, and here's a bucket load of cash. We're gonna back up a Brinks truck to you. Well, are you saying to me you wouldn't go back into a legacy news organisation?
I could do 60 Minutes in my spare time. But I would want to have it as a contractual thing that I could personally fire Anderson Cooper.
Why is that?
He's just a total knob.
It is her 5th week in the chair, Barry Weiss at CBS. She is a polarizing figure. Do you think she's misunderstood, and how do you think she's doing at CBS News?
I think she's already doing great. I mean, I looked at the 60 Minutes interview with Donald Trump, and that was the most fair and interesting encounter I've seen with Trump in a mainstream media show in a long time. Because they treated him with what they didn't do the first time around, with a modicum of respect. There was a robust exchange of views on both sides. And I liked it. The tone was civilized. I texted President Trump and said, I really like the tone of that interview.
What did he respond?
He hasn't yet, but he will. He will. Well, probably when he sees this podcast. Yeah. But I just felt that was an interesting change in tone and change in attitude. And I do wonder if the mainstream media had been a little bit more like that first time round, then Trump may not have been as antagonistic in response as he was. If you look at The Art of a Deal, his big book, it's all in there, the playbook. If somebody whacks you whack them 10 times harder back. If you're going to goad someone like Trump, as they did with the Russia collusion stuff and everything else for 2 years, he's going to react in kind. I think this time you're seeing somebody who's worked out the system, has a plan. People may not like it, but he has a plan. I look at the Democrats and I just don't see any plan or any ideology or any real idea of which way they want to go. Are they going to plunge back down into the wokeism ideology, which I think would be completely disastrous? Mamdani here, you think, is like the sort of king of woke in New York. I mean, it's a crazy situation, I think, that you've got a guy who may be actually mayor of New York City who publicly called for the NYPD to be defunded. It's just incredible to me. But there we are. So I think that, I think that's where we are.
What is the path back for the Democrats then? Do you see a path back? How
Sense
do they...
of ground. They've got to get somebody like a Bill Clinton, Barack Obama. They've got to get somebody who's going to bring people from the other side to them, because they have a vision, they have a dynamism, they have a charisma. Mamdani has a lot of that. It's just his vision is completely unworkable. Socialism doesn't work anywhere in the world. Sometimes you can point to a country for a few years, fine, but it never works over time. And I think what he'll find is what they found with the Labour Party in the UK. They got him with a thumping majority, but look at what's happened now. They've made massively overpromised on stuff. Now they're having to abandon all their pledges. They're going to tax the hell out of the Brits.
And reform is rising.
And reform,
because people don't have a proper alternative.
Of course, and they're basically going to push reform into government. So I think Mamdani here could be the best election tool the Republicans have for both the midterms, if he wins, for both the midterms and the next election.
Interesting. You've been hired, fired, despised. Which version do you want to be?
And loved.
And loved, sorry. Which version would you love to be? What is your legacy? How do you see you would like to be?
I just think if you want to script a tombstone, here lies Piers Morgan. He entertained people.
Certainly did.
I mean, that is inarguable. Whether you're entertained because you despise me or love me, I don't care. All I try and do is be true to myself. If you watch my show Piers Morgan Uncensored, I think it would be very hard for people to box me in to any politically partisan position on stuff. I don't come at it like that. I come at it as a fairly centrist journalist, I think, who tries to challenge people on all sides. I think it's why we've got such traction. I think people think we're fair. I think they think that I'm not partisan in that sense. Most people in my space are, either to the left or right. We tend to be in the centre. Yes, things get lively. But I used to get lively in my local pub when I grew up. Nothing wrong with a good old passionate debate.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you've interviewed pretty much everyone. Who's someone that rattled you? Who's someone that you thought, oh, here we go. This is not what I was expecting here?
Well, Donald Trump is hard to interview.
Why is that?
Because he's very, very good at deflecting and dissembling and throwing things back at you. And his best trick is where he says, Piers, as you know, and then says something completely outrageous. And if you're not quickly like, hang on, what? Piers, as you know, the earth is flat. Whoa, what did you just say? So he's tricky to interview. I wouldn't say I've always enjoyed it. I've always had great jousts with Donald Trump. Kanye West is a pain in the arse to interview.
Why?
Because I think he's got supreme narcissism on a scale that is just off the charts. And I think it's turned him into a joke figure, which he finds quite hard to deal with. But the last interview I did with him lasted 2.5 minutes. I think he's become a bit of a pathetic character, if I'm honest. But, I'd like people to give me a hard time. I like people to challenge me in interviews. Got no problem with that. I don't mind being challenged at all, either when I'm doing an interview or being interviewed. But it's fine. I don't care. Everyone should be free to ask any questions, right? You don't have to answer them. I could ask you all sorts of things, especially about your checkered life. But you were under. But you're in Australia. It goes to the territory. But you're under no compulsion to have to answer them.
True.
And I think that's the bottom line. All this debate at the moment about platforming people. I do think if you platform people, say Nick Fuentes, for example, this big debate.
Yeah. What do you think about the Tucker?
My only criticism of it, I think Tucker should have gone a bit harder on him. Tucker was harder on me when he interviewed me in the desert in Riyadh than he was on Nick Fuentes, who said the most despicable things imaginable. So that was my criticism wasn't him platforming him, although I personally wouldn't platform Fuentes unless I had free rein to go after him about all his public statements.
Do you think it is dangerous that someone like that is getting airtime, is getting
Can
oxygen.
be. It can be when they
sprouting forward, some pretty wild.
Yeah,
things.
I mean, the guy is an unashamed lover of Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Let's be clear what he is,
Right.
But I think if you're going to get him on, look, they get free reign anyway. So this thing about platform, he has a big platform. He's spewing the stuff out all the time. But you've got to hold him to account properly to it. And my only criticism of Tucker I get on very well with Tucker, but I just felt he could have gone harder on Fuentes, on his statements that he's made. But then Tucker would argue he doesn't really do that, but he did it with me.
What's the one big get that you're still chasing? If I was to say right now we could get you one big interview.
Yeah, Meghan and Harry for a couple of hours.
What will you ask them?
Uncensored. I've got a lot of supplementaries.
Oh, come on.
A lot of supplementaries to the Oprah interview. Things that Oprah should have asked.
Such as? Just give me one.
When you said you got married in the back garden 3 days before the wedding and the Archbishop of Canterbury officiated, you do realise that if he had officiated in that wedding in your back garden, he would have got a prison sentence. That would be the first question.
I'd be curious what the Archbishop would...
Second question, when you called the royals a bunch of racists, where's the evidence that any of them were actually racist?
Right.
Thirdly, when you said that you were prohibited by the palace from getting any help for your mental health issues, who was the person that prohibited you? Because that person's never emerged. In other words, all this crock of shit that you spewed to Oprah Winfrey that caused so much damage to the royal family, the monarchy, and Great Britain, where's the evidence for that?
Well, they started a whole jigsaw identification whispering campaign because they were never clear about who any of these people were, and there wasn't much to back it up.
Yeah, I just want to have just some basic facts would be great.
Do you think someone starting out today, bearing in mind how fractured the media landscape is, at 20 odd, could rise to the dizzy heights you did, could climb the greasy pole, could start?
So my mother
like
gave me a
this?
brilliant postcard I still have on my desk in London. There's a hippopotamus flying with a flock of seagulls, and it says "Ambition knows no bounds." And she gave me that when I was a junior reporter on the Wimbledon News.
I know the Wimbledon News, yeah.
Yeah, free sheet in Wimbledon, and yeah, I was just a young up and coming guy. There's I had no leg up from anyone. It wasn't like we had loads of money or loads of connections. None of that things. I just really wanted it. My advice to people who want to get on in the media is, well, how much do you want this? I know how hard you work with your new venture, right? And it's admirable. The work ethic is what you can't give people is actual hunger and a work ethic. I think they either have that or they don't. But if they have it, it's an incredibly powerful thing.
You can get anywhere with that.
You can get anywhere.
Yeah.
I think another thing we started about pubs. I just think pubs teach you that everyone's basically the same. In the end, we're all the same. The idea that you should look at some people as being inherently superior to you. You might have people who know more about a specific thing, who might be able to kick a football better than you, or who can do a scientific problem, solve it better than you. Lots of things other people can do better than you. But are they better people than you? No. Everyone's exactly the same. It's what you make of your life is what's important.
Is there any moment you thought you've gone too far? That you thought,
Yes.
actually, hang on a minute, this is just too far over the edge and you've hit a nerve? Or is that kind of the whole
Funny
game?
enough, I apologised to a former England cricket captain recently for going too hard at him when he fired a friend of mine, Kevin Peterson, who was a great cricketer for England. He fired him in 2013-14 after an Ashes series debacle. And I really went after him on social media. I kind of underestimated at the time, when you've got millions of followers, I've got nearly 9 million followers on X. If I post something, it hits hard. If I have a go at somebody, then it hits very hard. And they get bombarded with thousands of people who pick up on what I've said. You gotta be mindful of that. I think sometimes early on I used my social media firepower as a clunky fist. I think you got to be a little bit more mindful of the impact of when stuff lands. Go after the politicians, go after the big people who can handle themselves. That's all fine. But when you've got people that are not quite at that level, it's a little bit like seal clubbing. You shouldn't do it.
Are we seeing a bit more of a mellow, Piers? You turned 60 recently. Is that?
Well, I like to think I've still got the...
Are you mellowing out on us
Well,
here?
maybe I think you get a bit of experience and wisdom. You go on the roller coaster ride a few times, and I think you do end up in a slightly mellower place. Yeah, I would say also being your own boss is quite a mellowing thing. Right, in the end, I now have the comfort of waking up knowing the only person that can fire me is me.
Are you going to fire yourself?
I can't rule that out.
Piers Morgan, thank you for coming on the Breaker Pod.
Great to see you.
You can watch this pod on YouTube. You can listen on Spotify and Apple, and you can sign up to Breaker at breakermedia.com, and we'll be back next week. Cheers.